All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, Yo-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, and Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. What's up, Jonas?
What's happening?
How we feeling about Matthews playing tonight? He's, by all accounts, in the lineup. We think he's in the lineup. I guess they didn't have a morning skate, but
yeah, he's going to play.
He's playing.
So it's funny you guys took it that way. I didn't take those comments the way that you guys took them.
Jonas, it was weird. It was just weird how he said, yeah, the 70, it is a big distraction. I was
but you know what he was talking... See, this is why I can bring something to you guys.
Okay, what do you have for us?
He was asked about the fans and there were and the build-up in the building, because you could feel it. Anytime he got on the ice, it was like there was like a buzz. Mm-hmm. That's what he was asked about, and that's what he was talking about when he said distraction. He said it was becoming a distraction because anytime Matthews got on the ice, it was like, oh.
Right, but
it came out weird.
It came out weird because they're fans. It's a professional sport. If they start booing, is that a distraction?
They didn't do anything wrong.
What if they boo? Is that that would be a distraction too,
I just think
he
took it like he was saying the chase was a distraction.
No,
is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Why don't we just chalk it up to this? Using the word distraction was the wrong selection.
Agreed. Fair.
Yes.
Fair.
Maybe it's, yeah.
And being the head coach in Toronto, you're doing all the media, and I mean, it's just the wrong word. To toss out distraction, it looked, because you can pick snippets of the clips, and it's just like, wow, it was a distraction. You're like, man, this guy really talking about a guy scoring 70 goals being a distraction? Well, it's just a big misunderstanding is what you're saying.
Fair.
Right.
You're right, it's the wrong word. Maybe you say it's like it was taking away from the game, or the team was getting focused on it.
And he's also trying to balance Matthews getting his 70, because I'm pretty sure the idea was get 70 against Detroit if you can, and you're not playing in Florida.
Yes.
So then we can just pull a Carolina Hurricanes. They got like 10 guys out of the lineup tonight against Columbus, and that's ideal because you want to be rested. So he's trying to balance the Matthews, getting everybody ready, who's going to be in the lineup, and it's a lot. It's a lot for a coach.
Yeah, it's interesting how we mentioned the reaction to Varsho being out of the lineup on Sunday. How this time last year or 6 months ago,
batting 190, by the way.
Well, because lefties in particular too, obviously. But the point being, and I think it's a valid one. It's one I agree with. He hit a grand slam the night before, a home run the night before. You've invested heavily in this guy. Yes, I get it. The numbers say, I get it. It's also very early in the year to really stack up data on what he's been doing early in the season. But he's been in the big leagues for a while. It was a classic eye test versus, what do we used to call you guys?
Corsi.
Team Corsi. That's what it was. Team Corsi versus Team Eye Test. But the subject involved was Dalton Varsho, who nobody has had, has been supporting him since he arrived.
Yeah, tough trade.
And there's a similar scenario here with Keefe talking about the fans. That building has a reputation of being asleep, not being alive.
That's the loudest.
And now they're alive, and it's, hey, come on, let's not. You're really too loud for us. We'd prefer if you went back to drinking wine and eating sushi. So it's like you can't have it both ways. And I'm not saying you were arguing one way or the other, Jonas. Just interesting how that building always has that reputation. And they are alive, because why wouldn't you be? If you were in the building, you're thinking, this guy's going to hit 70 tonight. And I get to say, I was here to see it live. That would have been an incredible ticket. Now, there's going to be 10,000 people there in Florida. How many people are going to be in the building?
How many people do you think went down there to say, I want to see this guy score 70 goals?
Flew down to Florida?
I bet you a bunch.
I'll bet you there would be. And there'd be snowbirds down there anyway. It's getting a little bit late for that, but there'd still be a lot of Canadians, a lot of Toronto fans. It's a great road trip. You bring your golf clubs down. You go Florida, Tampa, mix in a couple of rounds.
Even stay for game one.
Even stay maybe for game one. It actually would set up to be a beautiful road trip. I guess the answer would be, how many Panther fans, and this is not their role or job at all to do or to know, but how many guys are showing up tonight in T-shirts, flip-flops, and shorts and have no idea this guy could hit 70 tonight?
Most.
You could watch history tonight.
They're just like, that tall guy, 34, is pretty good.
He's pretty good, man. That guy just hit 70. And they want to announce
Are they from
that.
Texas now?
Well, I don't know. I just threw that accent in. I don't know why. I was in Georgia. I was on the border of South Carolina. They got some great accents down there. But, yeah, we'll see what comes of it tonight. Matthews playing, Wall playing. McDavid hit 100 assists. He could have had 100 assists in the game last night.
Dude,
it was 9-1, halfway through the second period.
That's just mercy. Get me off the ice.
It's awful.
I had played in one game in Boston with the Leafs, and we beat them 10-1. And it was just like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, that's amateur hour.
10-1 in the National Hockey League is outrageous.
Crazy. But 100 assists is just a remarkable feat. He beats Kucherov to the punch, which I do think matters. Like, now you got there first. Kucherov could get there as well, which would be really cool. But he adds his name to a list that features Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, and Bobby Orr.
Dude,
that's what makes it even more cool.
Is to see Gretzky and everyone else is 1, and Gretzky's 11.
11 in a row. 11 seasons in a row.
That is why he's the great one. It's because as soon as someone does something incredible, it's like Gretzky times 100.
Yes.
It's insane.
That's why I've said before, I would love for McDavid to be able to be in pursuit of GOAT status. I think it would be great for the sport of hockey. I think it would be great to talk about. I don't think it can happen.
Nobody can do that.
You can't do it. Like you can't do it unless you rack up so many wins and Conn Smythe and Hart Trophy. Like, it is possible.
If he wins 10 Hart Trophies,
right,
and you don't want to look at the numbers and do a deep dive, maybe.
And again, the numbers back then were inflated. There were a lot of 10-7 games, 9-8 games. You know, there were a lot of guys putting up massive numbers in the 80s. So you do have the ability to adjust the eras and all that kind of stuff. But the hardware isn't there for McDavid, right? Like, if you want to,
Cups you're talking about.
Yeah, Stanley Cups. I think big international moments which have been robbed from him. That's not his fault. But he's got to get some cups. And I know the argument will be, well, when Gretzky did it, there were like 21 teams. Yeah. Still, he did it. He won 4. He went to how many cup finals? And his numbers are staggering, but that's not why we're talking about it. The point is, McDavid hit 100 assists last night, and that is an incredible feat.
But see, what I think is kind of underplayed in this whole thing, he had 64 goals last year.
Yes.
And then he gets 100 assists. That's Gretzky. Like, if you
For
look
this era, it's Gretzky.
It's Gretzky, because if you look at like the 60-goal scorers, I think Gretzky had 5 60-goal seasons, which is the most. And then he also has those millions of 100 assist seasons. Mm. That's the thing. Like, he can go from 64 goals to 100 assists. Nobody else can do that. Like, Matthews is going to have 70 goals or whatever he ends up with. There's no world in which he's ever getting 100 assists.
No, never.
80 assists, 70 assists, 60. Like, what do you think his career high is? Probably 50?
For assists?
45?
Yeah.
Something like that?
I mean, he's hit 100 points now a couple of times. When he had 160 points, he had 106 points, he had 60 goals. So he probably had 46 assists. That's probably a career high. Yeah. Just did the math on the fly. Did the math on the fly.
I like that.
I'm on fire already.
Yeah.
But you're right. That is what can allow McDavid to be in the discussion, certainly, as a guy that is pushing towards top 4, top 5 all time, that he's doing things that are uniquely his. It's unique to McDavid. No one else is going to. And listen, I get it. Kucherov could get there. Other players will get to 60-plus goals, but no one's doing both. No one's going to have a career high in this era of 64 goals and a career high of 100 assists.
Never.
It's never going to happen.
Where do you think his career stacks up right now with Crosby? Obviously, he doesn't have the cups.
Well, so he's not in the conversation as far as I'm concerned. I think Sid is vastly underrated.
Yeah. So do I.
I think vastly underrated. I think the way he plays, the way he competes, the way he wins. Like, if I have one game, Game 7 tonight, I got to win it. Sid in his prime or McDavid in his prime, I'm taking Sid every day. Every single day. And a Game 7, have to have it tonight because I know he shows up in those moments.
But if McDavid wins back-to-back cups, you might change your answer.
Absolutely. Opinions are subject to change. Don't get me wrong. It's not that this is something that has to be locked in for the rest of time, but Sid has done it. He's a killer. He's won Conn Smythe. He's
game-winning goal in the Olympics.
Exactly. So that's what he did in his prime. I got to see it first before I get there with McDavid to say that he deserves to be ahead of Sid in a hypothetical like that.
Yeah, let me put the number at 1.5 cups for McDavid. Over, under.
I'm going to go over, man.
I'm under because he's 9 years. This is 9th year in the league, I think. He's 9 years in.
Yeah.
Like he could win this year. Obviously, they're one of the 5 or 7 favorites to win. He absolutely could. Could go out in the first round, too.
You said over? I think I'm with you.
I'm just saying over, and I will say this. You just mentioned this is the 9th year. I just look at the body of work and how good he is. And I just remember my dad telling me when I was younger, when you have the best player, like by a lot, and he was referring to Gretzky at the time, you're going to have a chance to win. And you saw it in spurts last year. Like, the guy was unstoppable. Him and Draisaitl. They were scoring every night, and yet they lose. And it's like, how did that happen? And obviously goaltending was a problem and other issues. But sooner or later, you think it would materialize where this guy picks off a couple.
Yeah, I hope he does for his legacy, for the betterment of the game. You need a guy like that. He's got to win. Like, he's got to have wins. I think the same sentiment should be there for Matthews. I know it won't be around the rest of the country. You know, if you don't love the Leafs, you hate the Leafs.
What the hell else is there for both of them to do? One guy's got 64 goals, other guy's 100 assists, 70 goals. It's like there's only one thing left to do, man.
Right. Like, that's what you need to be looking for in your sport. Like, you look at other sports, it's depressing that Mike Trout has not won anything. And it's
won anything. Yeah, I don't even think he's had a serious run.
No,
he's in like 3 or 4 playoff games total.
3, I believe, and they got swept in the ALDS. He has not won a playoff game. I don't believe Mike Trout's been in the clubhouse after a win in the playoffs.
That's insane.
That's staggering.
That's not his fault.
No, it's the nature of the sport and team building, and it's not McDavid's fault that they haven't won a cup. If you put McDavid on Vegas last year, they win the cup.
Of course.
On Colorado the year before, they win the cup. Like, it's not McDavid individually. The same thing would apply with Matthews. It's on the team building, management, ownership to push it over the top. And he's got to play his role too. He's obviously going to be great and will be great. But the NFL, you have Mahomes. You need someone else in the NFL. Like, you need Burrow to get one at some point, or Josh Allen. You know, like that's what you're looking for. I think if you're in the sport and if you're in marketing, and you got, like, if McDavid doesn't get one, like, can you imagine if LeBron was about to retire and he hadn't won an NBA championship yet? The conversation revolt. Like, it's impossible to even envision that. But that's the level he's at. McDavid is at a level of greatness.
It's kind of like Manning. Remember, it took him right until the end to win his first Super Bowl?
Well, he
was never like
he got one in Indy.
He won his
right. He got one in Indy.
He won his first one in 06.
Right.
He had been in the league for only 8 or 9 years.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, they beat the Bears in Miami. Rex.
You can't trick us with trivia, Jonas.
Yeah, come on, Jonas. Do you realize who you're talking to right now? Rex Grossman.
I guess a better example is
played against.
Elway.
Elway's a perfect example of that.
Better.
Ovi.
Yeah.
Ovi, better one.
Ovi.
Better.
Ovi was 32, wasn't he?
Yeah. Elway would have been in his probably late 30s.
Wasn't Yzerman 31?
Yeah. Yzerman was in his 30s.
But we don't have like a rings culture in hockey. Like, that's not a thing, really. Nobody talks about that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
Yet it should be. I think it has to be if you're talking GOAT status.
But free agent signings like the NBA, the NFL, everyone talks about going to get a ring, going to get my ring.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. That's not said in the NHL.
Well, and yet, like, you think back to Ray Bourque when he went to Colorado, it was like he's got to get his ring, right? We don't really have any guys like that, do we? Not that I can think of.
Yeah. I mean,
obviously, the stars that we're talking about.
Right, and that's what separates these guys. Like, if you're talking about a good player, really good player, it's a different story. It'd be a cool story, great for them. Yeah. But if we're talking legacy players that are already going to the Hall of Fame and are considered, like McDavid and Matthews, through 8 years of their career, are already two of the, 20, 30 greatest players ever? Like, McDavid certainly is. I don't think Matthews is far off. I think McKinnon's in that conversation.
Absolutely.
Like,
all day.
Yeah. Like, you look at what these guys do, like they're chugging up the rankings of all-time greatness. Yet, if you just use Matthews as the conversation and what he is, I believe he is moving towards, he has a legitimate possibility of being the greatest goal scorer of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes him he's somewhat exclusive in that pursuit compared to his other, the other players around the league, because I don't know what other GOAT status is available. Like, greatest playmaker ever? I don't think so. Like, I don't think McDavid can get McDavid greatest skater ever. Like, he might own that already.
Is, yeah.
Probably would.
Yeah.
But in terms of goal scoring, like GOAT status, he can get there. Yet the other guys he's competing with, Ovi's got a cup, Lemieux's got a cup, Bossy's got a cup, Hull's got a cup, Gretzky's got cups. Like, they all have cups, and they all scored massive goals in massive moments.
Yeah.
Like,
and the cup is the King Daddy Topper, where it's on top of the individual stats, the physical skill set, where it's like, you got the cup or not?
Yeah.
You just said that. Give me one game, winner take all. I'm taking Sid right now because he's done in the big moments.
Right, exactly. Yeah. in his prime. And
puts everything over the top.
It puts everything over the top.
You look at Stevie Yzerman, and he was regarded as one of the top 3 back in the 80s and 90s, with Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky, one of those automatic 100-point guys. And the respect and the admiration for Steve Yzerman after he won the Cups, it was about sacrifice, blocking shots, the intangibles, how he adjusted. And nobody ever talks about Steve Yzerman and his points. That's all they talk about is Steve Yzerman evolving into the champion.
To your point, in doing all this Matthews research, I didn't know he scored as much as he did. Like, he scored 60 like 2 or 3 times.
Yzerman? Oh, yeah.
Like,
oh, dude, he was a 150-point guy.
Yeah, he had 160, I believe, one year.
Yeah.
I think he's one of only like 4 or 5 guys at 160.
Well, and if you could pick like an arc from Matthews to like copy, like obviously they're different players, that's it, right?
Yeah.
You guys don't want it to take as long as it did for Yzerman, but...
Well, listen, beggars can't be choosers.
Takes what it takes.
Doesn't matter as long as it happens. I think most Red Wing fans would admit that. And I will say, I was having nostalgic vibes last night watching that building pop in Detroit.
Dude,
that was an awesome
finish,
vibe.
Man. I went right from the Jays to that, and it was a perfect segue where it's like, Jays get the win, and now let's go watch this finish. And you're like, okay, they're done now. They're really done. And then Raymond, what an incredible play in overtime to have the juice to, like, a lot of guys are dead tired when they're spending time in their own zone, and he just flew up that ice and ripped it home. That was an awesome finish.
That was, and he scored the goal to tie it, too, right? So he ties it, then wins it in overtime, and that place has had nothing going for it since it was built. They built Little Caesars Arena years ago, then the pandemic hit. Team's been terrible. Detroit's been awful for a long time. And now they've had this really cool resurgence, and Patrick Kane's there, and they've been in the playoffs basically all year, and they had to have that last night, and they tie it late and win it in overtime. That place was going nuts. And I love that because Detroit's got a great history, and it's a great hockey town.
Well, isn't it all for naught if Washington wins tonight?
If Washington wins, they're in. Yeah, if Washington wins, I believe it's wins in regulation. But if they win in regulation, Washington's in, and the Islanders got in last night. So, yes, you're right. Philly, and they're playing Philly, and Philly's got to win in regulation. Maybe it's Washington just has to win. I think it could be Washington just simply has to win. Philly's got to win in regulation because then that would obviously take points away from Washington. And then you've got Detroit, home and home in Montreal. So they go to the Bell Center tonight to wrap up their season. Obviously, they have to win. Pittsburgh's got to win. Like, it's just a wild scenario here at the end of the season. And a lot of these teams a week ago were losing outright and looked as if they wanted nothing to do with the playoffs, and now they're all starting to get hot again and trying to get in.
That would suck for Pitt because they're done.
Yeah.
Like, somebody's winning.
Yeah, so let me read this here. The final East wildcard scenario. Leave that up, Joe, from the bridge. So Washington, a win in any fashion, they clinch the spot. Detroit gets in with a win in Washington loss to clinch the spot. Pittsburgh eliminated, obviously, as we just said, if Detroit or Washington win, and Philly needs a regulation win and 0 points for Detroit and Pitt. Obviously, that's a tough spot for the Flyers to be in. But there's a really great scenario playing out here, and someone's going to get in, and the Islanders are in, and Patrick Waugh started pushing the right buttons, and including the Stones to play Varlamov, and Varlamov got them over the top.
Dude, you got to give props to Patrick Waugh, man. He went in there. They weren't playing that well. I don't think they took off as soon as he got there, but he got him in, and that was the main goal. And these coaches are just going to keep getting canned because they get the coach bump, and they just met, like, the LA Kings are in, the Islanders are in, and GMs are just going to say, I got to switch it up.
Well, there was a firing down in Buffalo today, right? Like, Don Granato was let go, and listen, they had a disappointing season. I was thinking of Buffalo last night watching that Detroit game. It's the same thing. Like, it's a great hockey market. That building is an awesome spot, but the Sabres have just been, like, Detroit bottomed out and moved back up before Buffalo ever even sniffed the playoffs. And you look at how many coaches they've gone through. Since they let go of Lindy Ruff, I was looking at it today. Someone tweeted this out. Mike Harrington tweeted out, since Ruff was fired in February of 2013, they've had Ronnie Rolston, your boy, Ted Nolan, Dan Bylsma, Phil Housley, Ralph Kruger over Zoom, and Don Granato. So they've just rifled through coaches for a decade. None of them have had any success.
It's a mess, and Kevin Adams has got to fix it.
Yeah.
I think he will, and I think he knows what to do. But like we talk about Ottawa, you've got to look at the players on the ice and say, I can't fall in love with all these guys and say they're such awesome young players and they're the ones that are going to dig us out of the ditch because they're not even sniffing the playoffs.
Yeah.
They did last year. They had a bit of a run, but they got to fix what's in net because if they think that like you want to wait around another year next year for Levi to continue to develop, good luck with that. The fans will go nuts if they aren't already.
Yeah.
And there's some players that are going on the ice you got to look at and say, I got to get somebody different. Maybe the results are better.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you have to lose?
Well, that's the question, right? You got to make sure you pick the right guys to keep. They got some good players there. Mm-hmm. And look what they have on defense. Like Owen Power's a really good young defenseman. He's young, but he's moving in the right direction. Dahlin's a really good player. You know, you've obviously made deals. The Middlestat deal, you brought in Byram. Like you would think they're pretty set on defense. You know, you've got some really good puck-moving, solid defensemen. Add some size with the rest of them. Find a goalie, and at least from the back end out, you should be in a pretty good place in Buffalo. But now they seek out a new coach. They got to get a new coach. But the turnover has just been crazy in the NHL.
How much of it is ownership? Like, I don't know enough about the Pagulas, but hasn't this mostly been their tenure?
I think when they stormed in, remember there was nerves that the Bills were leaving, and what were they going to do in Buffalo? What was going to happen with the Sabres?
More of a GM thing than an owner thing, where the GM goes to the owner and is like, I got to shake this up or we're going to be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think the owner's saying, wow, they look stale out there. They got to...
But who's hiring the GM? The owner, right?
The owner's got to take some responsibility.
But I just think the idea of replacing the coach is the GM's idea.
Oh, yeah.
Not an owner where the owner is like, wow, it looks like you need a mix up behind the bench.
I was reading this about Granato. I think he has an extension that kicks in next year.
Mm-hmm.
Because they signed him to an extension 2 years from when he was done. So his 2-year extension, if I'm not mistaken, kicks in next season.
So they're going to have to pay
that's
that
good
out.
Management.
Yeah. Well, and what you worry about with the ownership there is, will the owner pay for the next coach?
Yeah,
or will he say, all right, if you're going to fire that guy, go ahead, but the next guy can make $700,000.
And then it's just stupid to fire him if you're going to play that game.
But would you be surprised if they did? I wouldn't be. You know, like Pegula.
I would just say to the owner, I'm not firing him if we're just going to cheap out on the next guy, because that's a joke.
Yeah, but it could happen. I don't know. We'll see who they end up picking up. All right, James Duthie coming up in studio. The Leafs are obviously in action tonight down in Florida. That game is on TSN 4, so we'll tee that up with JD, get his take looking back on the Masters. Ratings are in on CBS. We'll tell you a little bit about that. And the Jays are back in action tonight as well. They're coming off a 3-1 win last night. So we'll look at Game 2 of the Yankee series. And James Duthie coming up in studio. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. Leafs Panthers on TSN 4 tonight. James Duthie around the table with a beautiful green tie.
I didn't even think of that when I put this on today. It wasn't my ode to our weekend together at the Masters.
Great to see you down there.
So wonderful.
Right in your element. This guy runs Augusta National.
You know the little meme that they always put out with Hazy B, the old Hazy B shot where he's kind of peeking around the corner?
You saw him like peeking?
That's where he was the entire week. He was just so giddy. It was wonderful.
You got to tell us one thing, Jimmy. What the hell happened with Tiger Woods in the amateur? Like, do you know anything about
just handing the paper over or whatever?
Is it one of those things where Tiger was like, here's my number? Well, why would he do that on the golf course?
There isn't any video of it, right? I think that's the issue, or no video has surfaced. So some reporter saw Tiger handing it to him, asked the kid in the news. The kid had a very weird pause where he looked at the guy he was sitting with from Augusta National, like, do I have to answer this? I don't know. I have no answers for
that guy will never be seen at Augusta again.
Neil Shipley? Yeah,
no, the reporter.
Oh, the reporter. Yeah.
Tiger will get his claws on that, and he'll be like, see you later.
How dare you? How dare you?
No, my favorite part is when friends come down for the first time, and just to... Because it never gets old how cool it is and how exciting it is for people to see it that way. So
yeah, I had many people express that same thing, like, because that's kind of a breaking of the ice. Like, how many times have you been down? 1, 2, 5. I'm down here all the time, and if you find another first timer, it's like a real connection.
Have you talked to any people down there that are like, "This is my 30th Masters," nonsense like that?
No, but where we sit at the back of the driving range, our set is sort of by the main exit. Like, people walk by the driving range, and I am always shocked by the amount of people leaving. We usually watch the back nine from our set, And the amount of people pouring out of there at 4:30 on Sunday.
I agree.
And the only thing I can think of is that they come every year. So let's just go watch the back nine at home. Because for anybody listening who's dying to go to Augusta National, that's mind-boggling that you would just leave 3 hours on Sunday at the Masters. But every day, people are just filing out, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Like
I witnessed that like multiple times just being around there. I'm like, where are these people going? I saw them like earlier in the morning. I would see people leave.
Yeah, but you don't know what people's schedules are.
That's the
They got to
thing.
catch flights. They got to get home. Their passes are only for a certain time.
Well, that can be it too. And each pass you can leave once and come back. So what you saw in the morning was people would wait in line to get into the gift shop for an hour or two, load up, go out, put it in their car, and then come back in.
Right.
Like it was crazy to see people filter out of there with like $5,000 worth of stuff at 9:30 in the morning.
there is also
Like, it's
something to be
crazy.
said. I would never do this my first time there, but once you had been before, there's something to be said for going in the morning, getting all your souvenirs, walking around, going to 16, follow the leaders for a bit, and go watch the last nine on TV.
Yes.
Because as I've said this before, for us as covering it, it's impossible. The only time I ran up and watched Tiger 5 years ago because I wanted to see Tiger putt out at 18. But usually I'll walk the front nine, and then I got to be back in for the back nine because you can't do a post show. You can't
not watching.
You
You
can't
don't
report
know.
on the course. You don't
Yeah.
know what's going on. There's
Don't have a
roars
clue.
here. There's old wooden scoreboards.
Yeah.
They want it to be like you're walking back into 1930, but it makes an impossibility to cover it correctly,
Right.
unless you're just following one guy or one group.
So I was right there at Amen Corner. I was 60 yards up the fairway on 11, watching the carnage of Oberg go in the water, Morikawa go in the water, Homa hit into 12, and it was just far enough where I could see Homa. I knew he was up to something, but I couldn't tell. Like, did he have to take a drop? And I'm like, what is he
happening?
doing up there? Because
What's
he's up there and he's in the weeds, and it's weird because he's been up there a long time, and the rules official's over. I'm like, something's going on.
That Oberg will never hit a draw into that hole again. He probably just thought, I'm going to hit a draw and put it tight, and he learned a lesson where you got to miss right.
But you were
have
in the
to.
right spot because you essentially saw what
everything.
was the end of the
I
tournament.
saw the whole tournament, and you're right, Oberg, and he missed it by about 7 or 8 yards.
I know, but
It
his
would have been
caddy's got to
perfect.
tell him, do not hook this golf ball.
Yeah.
It's got to be a fade at the pin, and if you miss a little bit right, you can get up and down.
Especially where he was. He was on the right side of the fairway or left side looking down, and I saw him messing around with his clubs. He was uncertain for a while and talking back and forth, and obviously he ended up saying, this is what I'm going to do. And I remember seeing that, and then Morikawa, where I was, Scheffler looked like he was 50 yards past Morikawa on 11. I don't know how far up the fairway he
30,
was. He looked like he
35.
had blown it past him.
Yeah.
And he was just sitting there watching this because he had seen Homa do what he was doing, and Morikawa puts it in the water. And I'm sitting there with two people, and I say, I guarantee you Scheffler will either catch the right side of the green or will miss the green. There's no way he's going anywhere close to the water. And he did. He pushed it right, and he's like, all right, no problem. Try to get up and down. If I don't, I'll bogey and I'll leave. But it was just like brilliant that Scheffler did that.
He's ludicrous. There was a stat was thrown out this week, and I can't remember if it's strokes gained, tee to green, or just his iron play. The analytics in golf are really good right now. But the gap between Scotty and the number 2 iron player on tour, I think maybe Xander Schauffele, is the same gap as the gap between like the 20th guy and the 110th guy. So there are 90 players you could squeeze in the gap between Scotty and the second best iron player on tour.
Crazy.
That's ludicrous. But just to finish off our point of getting to the Masters, so many people will park themselves in the bleachers behind 15, which is a great spot because you can see the approaches to 15 and you can stand up and you watch the guys hit on 16. Yeah. To me, that's my favorite part of the course. But then thousands try to go behind 16 green, thinking that could be, like Tiger that year. But, this year, if you just parked yourself behind 16 green for the last 6 groups, the tournament was over by the time it got to you. You got
You
nothing.
were at the garden spot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was the whole tournament
But you never
happened
know
there.
where that spot is going
And
to
it
be.
was a complete coincidence. It was like, let's walk over there. And then instead of being on the right side of 12 looking at 13T, I'm like, let's go over to 11 and kind of check that out. Because if I'm on the other side, I don't see any of that. It's just wild how it plays out.
Do you have Tortorella thumb, or what's going on with your hand?
We get you a torch brace?
The only drama at the Masters was me almost slicing my thumb off with a. I make smoothies for the guys. That's the one thing I do in the morning for those who want to be healthy, because there's a lot of unhealthiness that goes on at the
I
Masters.
can't imagine the food.
I walked 70,000 steps and put on weight.
It's insane.
I'm fatter today.
You were just grabbing pimento cheese.
Oh, I was crushing everything that was there.
Well, we have no real option. You can't bring food in. And at the media center, it's all the same food you can buy, right? So
yeah,
it's great, the egg salad, whatever, the pimento, the chicken salad, but it's great for a day or two. But when you're there for 8 days and that's all you can eat, and you pile down 30 of these things,
Bobby Weeks, like his shorts must have been like 30 egg
it's
salad
awful.
sandwiches.
He mix in a
So anyway, I try to make smoothies.
I
I almost cut off my thumb, and I bled for like 3 days.
Okay.
I kept for Friday and Saturday at the Masters. All I did was bleed. Every time I wasn't on the air, I was in the washroom changing my bandage. I probably should have had stitches, but where can you get stitches during the Masters?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So I just bled for 3 days.
Okay. Well,
I'm fine.
It's good to see you. It's good to have you in here. And this is it for the Leaf panels.
What a night to come back to.
I know. It doesn't get better than this.
This might be the greatest, most interesting playoff night. You're better at this, Jonas. I can't remember one in the last decade.
Like a game 81 where it's like, there's some stuff going on here.
So much stuff going on.
So how do you, I'm curious, take us behind the scenes as you're preparing tonight, because the game you guys are broadcasting, we could see history with Matthews scoring 70.
Mm-hmm.
This could be, as I called it yesterday, game 0.5 of the series, Leafs-Panthers.
Right.
But also, on top of that, forget what's going on with Detroit and Philly and Washington. If the Leafs lose to Florida tonight and Boston loses to Ottawa, the Leafs will play Boston. Mm-hmm. And Florida will play Tampa, which is actually a way better setup, I think, if you're the league. That's what you want. You want Florida-Tampa in the first round.
For sure.
I think you want Leafs-Bruins. But there has been this presumption that it'll be Leafs-Panthers regardless, and that's not the case. And the Leafs kind of control that with how they play tonight. If they win, they play Florida.
I think the Leafs should want Leafs-Bruins. I think time to exercise all that crap.
Yeah.
Now,
Exercising is with any team, though.
I know, but if you're gonna do it, do it against the Bruins. Knock them out in the first round, and then I don't know. I guess it felt that way with Tampa last year because of the way they played against Tampa before. But if I was Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner deep in my soul, I'd want to take out the Bruins. I'd be embarrassed by the way it's gone for the last few years, and even in the regular season here. So I don't know. I don't think they really care. I'm talking to Sheldon Keefe tonight in our pregame show. I don't think he really cares because it's a weird position on multiple fronts for him. One, first of all, you control your fate in the sense that if you beat Florida, you play Florida. Mm-hmm. So how does that play into your thinking in game prep? Does it at all? I don't think.
You want to beat Florida?
I know. Well, they're gonna they have no choice. So you're gonna do that, but there's got to be a lot of weird things going on in Sheldon's head. The same with the Matthews thing. I think the most fascinating scenario, if he doesn't score tonight, I'm sure you guys have discussed it already, but man, maybe he's already talked to him, and it's like you're not playing tomorrow night, which is probably the right decision. I mean, 70 is a great number, but you want to throw a bone to your guy who's been your MVP all year. It's fascinating.
You would make him not play?
No, I'm not.
I'll make him, but
no, I
wouldn't
make him not play. I'd have the conversation with him maybe and say, how badly do you want this and all that? And I mean, I'm sure the Tortorellas of the world or the Mike Babcocks would just make the decision themselves. But I think Keefe is already shown to be a sort of player's coach. But deep in his head, he's sat him, I believe, the last few years in the last game, right? So his preferable scenario would be to sit him. And I know you can sit back and go, look, the playoffs are all that matter. That's true. But does it really matter if he plays one more game when he's got a couple days off still before game
exactly.
one?
I don't think there's any connection to what happens in the next 48 hours.
I don't think so either.
And if they're going to win or lose, and you're not going to look back.
It's fascinating because I know the wheels are turning in Keefe's head on all those things.
I think more often you have to consult with Matthews, of course you do, but he's not going to say, I want 70. I don't think he'll say that. I think it's putting him in an awkward spot.
Say, I want to play.
Okay. But then you ask him, why do you want to play? For preparation or for 70? And which answer is it? And I guess I think it's on Keefe to certainly have the conversation and consult. I think Matthews is worthy of that. I get the impression that's the way Keefe operates, and that's probably smart. But I think Keefe has got to make the call, and Keefe has got to publicize the call. He's got to announce it to the world that I decided he's playing or I decided he's not. Because if it gets back to Matthews and something goes awry, this is where they're going to protect him. Because if you put him out there and you say, do you want 70? He's going to say, well, I care about the playoffs. Of course he wants 70. Like, why would he not want to score 70? It's an incredible achievement to get there.
But so in a situation, worst case where he played and something went wrong and he got nicked up a little bit, that the world would turn on Sheldon Keefe, whether it was Auston Matthews' decision or not to play.
And Keefe knows that. And that's the other conundrum with Keefe right now is that his future and his stability within the organization is not tied to Matthews scoring 70.
No.
He doesn't get an extension because he scores 70. He sticks around and is in a good standing within the organization if they win in the playoffs. That's how he stays secure. And
Keefe, that is.
That's Sheldon Keefe. Like, it does. If Matthews scores 70 and they get swept, Keefe could be gone in a week. Mm-hmm. But if he scores 69 and they sit him the next 2 nights and then they go on a cup run, Keefe is the king.
Isn't the ideal scenario he scores in the first 5 minutes and then he takes his gear off? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not playing the guy one more shift, man.
You might not have to. And they're short players, though, right? With McMahon
Forwards,
out and Domi's out, forwards in particular.
There was a classic line in the hockey news back in the day for Stevie Yzerman. He didn't play like the last 10 days of the season. And the GM came out and said, the only ice I want Yzerman to see is in his drink. That would be the same for Auston Matthews.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you got 70 tonight. You got Leafs. Is it going to be Bruins, Panthers? You've got
all
the other stuff in the
going
East.
on in the Metro.
McDavid hitting 100 assists last night.
We usually don't do updates in regional games. Like our Leaf broadcast, for the most part, we don't do updates during periods unless something spectacular happens. But I think we'll be all over the place tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to cover what's going on with the Capitals and what's going on, obviously, with the Boston-Ottawa game.
Sure.
It's a ton of fun. I think that the NHL envisioned this happening a lot more often than it's actually happened, where you have this kind of chaos. I mean, there's often one playoff spot. Like, wasn't it last year where Pittsburgh lost to Chicago or whatever, and
Florida got in?
But to have this much uncertainty as far as who plays who and who gets that second wild card it's awesome.
Which team do you think would be able to say we are the most heartbroken? Or who would you feel the worst for if they missed out on the playoffs? Of Pittsburgh, Washington, Detroit, Philly.
Who would he feel the worst for?
Yeah, I guess who would you be like sympathize for?
Sentimentally, I'd like Pittsburgh to make it, but I think you can make a case that no one should be that brokenhearted. Philly wasn't supposed to be there. I suppose because they were there all year, they'd be hurt by it, but they had no business really being there. I didn't think Washington had any business being there. They'd probably be the most disappointed because they're in the position tonight. Detroit was supposed to make the leap forward. I suppose you could.
Detroit feels like it should. They were in the playoffs all year. Like Pittsburgh's come on late. They were not in a good place.
I suppose
like
that would be the team that would be the most disappointed.
Yeah. Best hockey market of the bunch.
Would be Detroit, yeah.
I'd say Detroit. Like, that would get my vote.
Detroit got really hot like 2 months ago, and then they just had a garbage stretch where they lost like 6 in a row, and it's like, guys, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the only thing is, like, Pittsburgh sold at the deadline, and they're like, yeah, we're done. Mm-hmm. And then you make a run, and then to miss.
Right. You can make a case for all of them. It's like the Hart Trophy. Mm-hmm. The same thing. This is the Hart
Is that
Trophy.
a contentious
Do you vote for the Hart, Jimmy?
Am I voting for the Hart?
Do you vote for the Hart?
I don't. I did years ago, and I think they cut me off, I don't know what happened.
Me and Hayes are still looking for any kind of sniff.
We're waiting for. We'll step in on anything. Lady
we'll vote
Bing.
for the trainer of the year.
Yeah.
Like they acknowledge a trainer every year. We'll vote for it.
We'll vote for the best trainer in the National Hockey League.
We'll scour the league, man,
Yes,
and
we
say
will.
who gets the tape and who gets.
I'll rank it 1 through 32.
Yeah, we'll
I'll
do a
give you
presentation.
everything.
Have you ever got to the bottom, like from LeBron or somebody, on how they choose these things? Like,
I've never
why
heard.
should Darren Dreger get a vote and not Jeff O'Neill or me or you?
Great question. That's
Right?
what we've been
Does
asking.
Jonas do you vote?
Of course, Jonas does.
God, I'm
Is
filling
it a
it out right
writer
now.
bias?
Yes.
I think what
Yes.
happens is they see the stupid stuff that we do, and they're like, "These guys are clowns."
Yeah.
We can't give a vote to a guy who comes in like a boxing outfit with his belt on.
Just we
on
do
trade
clown
deadline
stuff.
day.
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think some people see that and they're like, "We can't have these people."
The songs and
Yeah.
stuff, they can't have guys.
That's the
doing that,
answer. I don't
actually
think there's
voting.
any disputing that.
Yeah.
The answer is that
We're-
we don't.
We're
they
a
don't
joke
take
to
us
the rest of the
seriously.
league.
Yeah, they don't take us seriously.
Or by they we mean Jonas.
largely. Yeah, and his people.
His crew
Totally.
Jonas and his crew.
don't take us
His
seriously.
cronies that look
It's a
down on
crock,
people
Frank.
like us.
It's a crock.
Well, that's why we established the Lou Brown Awards around the Canadian Athlete of the Year. We said we're not involved. Like everyone in the industry is involved in that, except for O and I.
What did you say? The Lou?
The Lou Brown Awards is instead of the Canadian
Lou
Athlete
Marsh.
of the Year, they used to be the Lou Marsh.
We do the Lou Brown, the guy from Major League.
Yeah, the manager.
I guess I don't listen to the show enough. I'm sorry.
So we created our own
Oh,
thing.
it's one of our best ones.
We love the Lou Brown Awards. It's the best. And we do that basically in protest to the fact that we're not included for the Canadian Athlete of the Year because everyone else is in
I've been
it.
hosting hockey and TSN for 22 years. No vote.
Yeah, that's sickening. So you've been outcast
Disgusting.
too. There's something about you they don't like.
Disgusting.
They really don't like you for
Yeah.
some reason.
Well, I think it's what O mentioned. There's too much silliness that goes on our program.
I think you're probably right.
We don't apologize for that.
We're not
I'd
gonna
rather be
change.
who we are
Exactly.
than vote on your stupid awards.
We're outsiders.
Jonas, I don't know how you became the target in all this, but you are.
I'll take it.
You have to represent everybody. All right, JD. We'll catch you tonight on the panel.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Leafs Panthers on TSN 4 tonight. There he is, James Duthie. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Jays Yankees tonight. The Jays are making roster moves. They've reinstated Jordan Romano and Eric Swanson from the 15-day injured list, optioning Nate Pearson and designating Mitch White for assignment. So that's it for Mitch White. Pearson's obviously got options. Pearson, I just don't think has ever, like, there's a Manoah-Pearson element
Grappler
to it.
said he was the next Randy Johnson.
That's right. The Grappler's scouting report was that Nate Pearson would be as good as Randy Johnson.
Noodles doesn't usually get pissed off over baseball takes, but he went nuts on the Grappler for that one.
He was embarrassed for the Grappler for that take.
Yeah, he basically said, never again are you speaking on this show.
Please don't ever say that again.
And he was in management 2 weeks later.
And he's now in management. Yeah, which is great.
He's organized.
He's organizing things. But yeah,
He's
so
Doogie's boss.
I believe he is. Maybe I think JP's, maybe ours. I don't know. Maybe that's why we don't have votes. You know what? There's a chance that we've been invited to vote on stuff.
Dude,
and
if I
it's
ever
filtered
walk
to the
in here and
Grappler.
JP and Doogie are voting on NHL awards, I'll walk right back to my car and I'll be on my couch in 1 hour.
I would respect their votes. Those
I
are
don't think you
smart
guys would
gentlemen.
actually like having votes. It's a lot of work. Like I'm doing it now. It takes like
Yeah.
a lot of like.
Just
Do you think
anything
everyone
else
works
in
hard
this-
at it,
No,
though?
it's like anything else in this business,
yeah.
Jonas. The work is put in throughout the year watching the games.
Yes, fair.
And you know the stuff off by heart. The work, that's not work writing down what you saw.
No, but like you want to check. Well, I guess you guys don't want. I want to check numbers.
No, I hear you.
wanna check
I would do
stuff.
that too. But also, I think it's more. It can be stressful.
Yes.
Like, do I put him third, fourth? Like you overthink
Yes.
it a lot,
Yes.
which I understand.
Which
What
I'm
you're
doing
saying.
right now.
Yes, and that's because you care. That's a good sign. But I guarantee you, there are voters that are like, yeah, just throw those ones. Like, how would you know?
Yeah, true.
Right? Like, how would anyone know if someone put hours in or 30 seconds?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
Would know. But Romano and Swanson back, that's big.
Who is this? Might be a dumb question. Who's the last great pitcher they developed? Like
Sanchez?
obviously, you'd say
Well, Halliday,
Manoa
obviously.
last year, or
I thought Sanchez was going to be a
But that's it,
stud.
man.
that's a long.
Is he even in the league?
No, he's not. No, it went from, there was a Dustin McGowan era.
Yeah.
There was an Aaron Sanchez era. I think Stroman counts. Like Stroman's on the mound tomorrow.
does,
He's
yeah.
still in the league.
He was
He's
a big
good
game.
pitcher.
Ricky Romero was pretty good for a bit.
Well, and then Ricky had the real issues. Like Ricky had issues that were even maybe more acute than Manoah.
Yeah.
And he had injury problems and it just completely fell off. That was really tough to watch.
Yeah.
Like watching him go out every fifth day was wild because he couldn't get out of the first or second inning. But like Dustin, I'll give you some names. Dustin McGowan, Aaron Sanchez, Nate Pearson,
Those are,
Alec Manoah. That's why when you hear like Ricky Tiedemann, I'm excited for that kid.
but it's like,
But I
is
don't-
it just going to be the same thing?
You got to get to 4 or 5 years before you even know, because Romero was really good and then it fell off. Manoah was really good, it fell off. Pearson just never arrived. McGowan never arrived. Sanchez was really good at times in 15 and 16, but really he made the bigger impact during those runs in the bullpen. So that's a good question. Stroman counts. Like Stroman was drafted, developed by the Jays, came up with the Jays. He would count.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's like there's certain organizations
question,
when they
though.
have young pitchers and you hear about them, you're like, yeah, they're going to be good. They
Mhm.
pitch for Tampa.
yeah.
We haven't had that here with the Jays.
Yeah. I mean, Halliday was obviously the best of the bunch, but
20 years ago.
that was a long time ago, of course. Halliday's a Hall of Famer, so it's one thing to say if you're asking developing a Hall of Famer or just developing an everyday
Just
pitcher.
someone good.
Then it's Stroman. Stroman's the answer on that. He classifies as a good pitcher that's been in the league for quite some time and will continue to be in the league for a while. He's a good arm.
You get people hitting ground balls to second and shortstop. He's a ground ball pitcher, man. You'll last a long time, dude.
That's right. Yeah, and he jumped around the league.
But if he's the best pitcher your organization has developed for like a decade, 15 years, that's not great.
Not the greatest thing to hang your hat on, clearly.
No, that's totally reasonable. Unless we're forgetting someone that I can't recall. But yeah, that's probably about right. Maybe they need to figure that out. I think we just cracked the case, Jonas. We'll send an email to Shapiro. Shapiro. I just call him Shapiro for the first time since he's been in town.
Dude,
I learned quickly it's Shapiro. Shapiro. Stop messing around. I'll send him an email. Say, Jonas has got an idea. Start developing some pitchers, and we'll figure this thing out.
But you would think that would be a standard policy anyway.
Probably. But
anyone that would need to hear that, you would say, what is wrong with you for me telling you this?
Can you imagine them getting an email like that, like a fan got his email somehow? Hey, I got an idea. Call me crazy. Develop some arms.
Give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Love the Renos. Great stuff in Dunedin.
Let's get some pitchers cooking.
Let's see what we can do with some pitchers. All right, hour 2 coming up. Mike Johnson will join us. Confirm and deny still to come. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.